In 1923, a team of workers hauled 4,000 glass light bulbs, 60-foot steel beams, and telephone pole-sized lumber up a steep canyon trail on the backs of mules. Their destination? A wind-blasted ridge high above Los Angeles, a place that would come to host the largest real estate advertisement the city had ever seen. What they built? The then-named Hollywoodland sign has come to define American culture to this very day. You could see it from miles away, day and night, whereas those nearby could hear the electric transformers humming. And somehow, through fire, rot, vandalism, and outright collapse, the sign managed to survive. Though, in the modern day, extreme boundaries have been put in place to protect the monument, with those crossing the boundary finding themselves in a world of immediate legal anguish. So, how did a broken billboard from a failed housing development basically become a fortified landmark, and why is it totally forbidden to visit? Stay tuned to find out, as today we discover the rise, the fall, and the resurrection of the Hollywood sign. I'm your host Ryan Socash, and you're watching It's History. Let's start off long before the cameras arrived, back when the hills above what we now call LA were dry, remote, and sparsely settled. In the late 1800s, most of what we now call Hollywood was just farmland and citrus groves that had previously been parceled into ranches by Spanish colonists. The area was not particularly attractive to early Americans, as it was too far from the city, too dry for crops, and too steep for the railroad. In fact, it was so irrelevant that it didn't even have a commonly agreed upon name. That all changed in 1887, when a Kansas prohibitionist named H.J. Whitley, later known as the Father of Hollywood, bought up 500 acres near Cahuenga Pass and began branding the area as a healthful, moral retreat from downtown's growing chaos. To clarify, at the time, prohibitionist didn't just mean anti-alcohol. It was part of a broader 19th century reform movement tied to temperance, religious revivalism, and the idea that cities were dens of vice and corruption. Anyhow, men like Whitney weren't just selling land. They were selling their values along with clean air, quiet nights, and the promise of a better, more ordinary life out in the hills. And this is around the time that the name Hollywood started to come up. According to The Real World and Smithsonian Magazine, one persistent myth claims Whitley misheard a man saying hauling wood and thought that he said Hollywood. Whether or not that's true, the name stuck, and so did Whitley's vision. By 1903, the new town of Hollywood had a bank, a schoolhouse, and a streetcar line all the way down to LA. But its big break came in 1910, when Hollywood officially merged with the city of Los Angeles to gain access to things like its vital water supply. Funny enough, at the time, movies were still made in New York and Chicago, meaning California wasn't even really a part of the business yet. That all changed in 1911, when the Nestor Film Company opened the first permanent movie studio in Hollywood at the corner of Sunset and Gower. Their reasons were simple: year-round sunlight, cheap land, and wide range of filming locations within just a day's ride. We're talking beaches, deserts, hills, and forests. Other studios soon caught on to the idea, and by 1915, more than 15 of them were operating in Hollywood, as America officially went cinema crazy. And practically overnight, a steady stream of filmmakers, set builders, hopeful actors and actresses poured into the city. Studios popped up everywhere. So what had started as an Orange Grove suburb was now becoming a proper city, fast. And the people, well, they needed places to live. Enter Harry Chandler, real estate mogul and publisher of the LA Times. He wasn't a filmmaker, but he understood the business of attention just as well. So in 1923, Chandler and a syndicate of investors unveiled a new luxury housing development in the hills above Beechwood Canyon. They playfully called it Hollywoodland, and the way they chose to advertise it was anything but subtle. Perched in the hills above Beechwood Canyon, the new development known as Hollywoodland wasn't just selling lots, it was selling lifestyle. Stone gateposts marked the entrances to homes, curved roads were carved into steep terrain to preserve the dramatic views, as deed restrictions forbade anything commercial from opening in the neighborhood. No grocery stores, no signage, and definitely no movie studios. This was to be an enclave for the wealthy, not the working-class crowds of central Hollywood. To emphasize that, Chandler's team commissioned one of the largest outdoor advertisements ever attempted, a hillside sign that would not just promote Hollywoodland, it would define it. The project was overseen by Chandler himself, alongside with Sidney H. Woodruff, a real estate developer and builder originally from Michigan. Additionally, they had assistance from Pacific Electric Railway Company engineers who had experience working on slopes far steeper than this one. And with that, construction began in late 1923, with laborers using mules to drag massive wooden beams, steel supports, and 4,000 incandescent light bulbs up the rugged slopes of Mount Lee. The letters were 50 feet tall and 30 feet wide, made from corrugated metal panels and fastened to wooden scaffolding sunk directly into the hillside. Each piece of material had to be hand-guided into place, often across terrain so steep that workers used rope in hand with block and tackle rigs to stay upright. The total cost came in at $21,000, a substantial sum in 1923, equivalent to well over $350,000 today, excluding ongoing maintenance, of course. But the finished result was unlike anything Los Angeles had ever seen. Spelled out across the ridge in stark white letters was a single word: Hollywoodland. Curiously, at night the sign lit up in 4 animated phases. First, Holly, then wood, then land, and finally, altogether, Hollywoodland. Each letter was stubbed with bulbs powered by high-voltage transformers, which buzzed and clicked audibly in the area below. Some say this display was visible from up to 20 miles away, casting an awe-inspiring glow over the entire canyon. Now, although it was supposed to run for just 18 months, the city fell in love with it, so adjustments were made to prolong its operation. Newspapers began referring to the sign as a civic landmark. Tourists stopped their cars to take a photo from the road, and despite being built for a single housing development, it quickly became entwined with the public's idea of Hollywood itself, to the point that studio publicists began borrowing its likeness, using it as a backdrop for talent headshots, or referencing it in promotional material. By 1925, the glowing sign had transcended its origin. It became a geographic reference for all and began to define an emerging part of American culture, the movie business, in 50-foot-tall letters. And we need to acknowledge that these real estate moguls went above and beyond. They weren't just moving lots. They were managing the construction, marketing, infrastructure, and branding all at once, and doing it decades before that kind of work even really had a name. And we have to give credit where it's due. This was a masterclass in running a business, which actually brings me to something that makes that kind of work a whole lot easier today. It's called Odoo. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings everything together in one place, from sales and customer management to invoicing, inventory, manufacturing, and more. And the best part? You get super clean visuals for every step of the process. Kanban views track leads, dashboards offer a quick snapshot of your projects or finances, and the reports illustrate how your business is doing in real time. For example, the CRM lets you organize leads with simple drag and drop, and in accounting, invoices basically generate themselves thanks to Odoo's built-in AI. And if you manage inventory, you can see which orders are pending, automate purchases, and coordinate deliveries without the usual headaches. At every step, Odoo helps you save time and stay on top of everything. No tech expertise required. It's flexible too. You only choose the apps you need. Your first app is free forever, and you can try the full suite for 14 days. No credit card needed. So if you're looking to streamline your business without making things complicated, check it out. I'll leave the link in the description so you can explore Odoo. Thanks to Odoo for sponsoring this episode, and now, back to our story. The man behind the sign only expected it to be up for 18 months, so it was built without the necessary measures against decay. And as the years passed, the Hollywoodland sign began to show some pretty ugly scars. For starters, a windstorm in the early 1930s knocked out the third O right off the pole, and the city didn't replace it right away, meaning the sign remained standing, tilted, misspelled, and generally disheveled. Maintenance of the lights became a pressing issue as well. Now, initially the sign had a full-time caretaker named Albert Cothy, who lived in a small shack near the base and was responsible for changing thousands of bulbs, one at a time of course, and on a daily basis. Somewhat ironically, it would be the same caretaker who would later crash his car into the sign while intoxicated, destroying the original H, which was never really properly repaired. Hence, by the 1940s, the sign's lights were permanently shut off. And it's really no surprise, since the Hollywoodland Property Development Office also closed down during the Great Depression. By 1944, the remaining developers sold the land, including the sign, to the city of Los Angeles for just $1, as the surrounding area was incorporated into Griffith Park. Fast forward to the late 1960s, and you'd think the sign was put up to promote like a horror film or something. The paint was almost completely gone. The O had collapsed. The H was cracked, and everything was rotting and just falling apart. Considering that state of affairs, the city finally considered tearing it down for good. Just when they were about to take action, something remarkable happened. The people of Los Angeles stepped in to save it. In 1973, the Department of Recreation and Parks did what they could to remedy the situation, repainting, minor structural fixes, and most significantly, removing the word land from the presentation. According to the Hollywood Sign Trust, this wasn't just a shortcut around the worst damaged letters. It was a conscious break from the sign's origins as a real estate stunt. From that point forward, Hollywood was no longer a neighborhood pitch, as at this point, it was a citywide symbol representing many people beyond just the elite. Though I should probably point out that those once premium neighborhoods around the sign were also looking a little bit rough. The surrounding Beechwood Canyon area, once upscale and exclusive, had grown neglected. Cracked sidewalks, faded homes, and uneven development had replaced the uniform elegance that the Hollywoodland developers once promised. Sure, the original stone gates still stood, but they now marked the entrance to a neighborhood in transition. Though, quite surprisingly, not too many people took note of this. You see, the urban aging was completely overshadowed by the fact that the Hollywood sign itself, its reputation, was starting to rise. Dare I say, resurrect. By the mid-1970s, it had also started appearing in major films like Downhill Racer and Day of the Locust, used as a gritty symbol of old LA. At the same time, on TV, it became a visual shorthand for ambition, irony, and fame. It was so prevalent in the media that it became the flag of American pop culture, even if it was basically held together with cheap plywood. Though this wouldn't last forever, as in 1978, the second O, already cracked, collapsed completely, whereas the H had been damaged once again and the rest of the letters were barely clinging to the hillside. And this time, the city said that they couldn't afford to fix it. That's when none other than Hugh Hefner stepped in with a bold idea. He'd save the sign by crowdfunding it through celebrity sponsorship. He acted fast, hosting a benefit at the Playboy Mansion and inviting donors to, quote, adopt a letter at a cost of $27,777 each. According to the LA Times, Alice Cooper bought the second O in tribute to Groucho Marx. Gene Autry sponsored the L, and Warner Brothers Records paid for the W. All in all, 9 donors stepped up to save what had become a monument. And so it was. That same year, the original sign was torn down to be replaced once and for all. In its place, construction crews erected the new version, made of steel and concrete, designed to withstand time, wind, and public affection. The cost came to nearly $250,000, and the new sign was unveiled on November the 11th, 1978. This wasn't a temporary fix. It was a rebirth. The city supported the effort by forming the Hollywood Sign Trust, a nonprofit organization responsible for its upkeep and protection. The sign now had official oversight, a preservation mandate, and a new role. It was no longer just a skyline ornament, it was a piece of cultural infrastructure, making it more meaningful and visible than ever. Over the next 2 decades, the sign showed up everywhere, from the Terminator to Pretty Woman and, of course, The Simpsons. It was on posters, t-shirts, and album covers, and with every new sighting, the same question began to spread. Can I go up close and see it? The answer to that question would prove more complicated than expected, because just as the sign reached peak cultural power, it also became the target for things like pranks and protests. And to protect it, the city would have to draw a hard line, one that still exists today. For the first time ever, the Hollywood sign was off limits and totally forbidden. With rising fame came rising foot traffic, with hikers, pranksters, and others ignoring do not enter signs and following GPS pins straight into the restricted zone, and these issues have been happening on and off, and more times than not, they were up to no good. Though these antics were not exactly new. For example, in 1976, a local student famously altered the sign to read Hollyweed by using bed sheets and rope to reshape the O's into E's, a stunt timed to coincide with California's new relaxed marijuana laws. In 2017, a performance artist repeated the Hollyweed prank, but this time he was caught, arrested, and charged with trespassing. Others have scaled the sign to hang political banners, stage protests, or film virtual stunts. Apparently, one man even parachuted in using a powered glider, only to crash near Mount Lee summit. Then, in 2021, 6 people were arrested after changing the sign to read Holly Boob, and apparently, one of the culprits was a known Instagram model. They claimed that it was a protest against online censorship, but the LAPD were not impressed. Apparently, these people were detained at gunpoint, cited for trespassing, and escorted off the mountain under armed supervision. So each time, the result is the same: arrest, fines, and sometimes jail time. So how does the city stop people from getting near it? Well, for starters, they turned the Hollywood sign into a digital fortress. It's surrounded by 8-foot fencing, motion sensors, infrared cameras, and remote surveillance monitored 24/7. The sign itself is built on steep, unstable terrain, and so on. But surprisingly, these deterrents have not stopped people from trying to visit up close. So the city added helicopter patrols through the LAPD's Air Support Division to help emphasize how forbidden this location is. Anytime someone crosses the line, a dispatcher gets pinged. If needed, choppers are scrambled. And yes, when it happens, it's such a big deal that local news helicopters sometimes show up too, especially when the trespasser is live streaming their climb or posting to social media in real time. Additionally, there are other dangers that most people overlook. In recent years, hikers have begun ignoring closed trailheads, cutting through the residential streets in Beechwood Canyon, and even scaling fences to take selfies. Some end up stuck, dehydrated, and in need of rescue. In one case, the situation was so dire that a climber had to be airlifted off the hillside after getting trapped in the brush with no way to descend. These rescues are risky and expensive, and they happen more often than you'd think. For one reason or another, visitors to this sign are often misbehaved. Sometimes they leave behind trash, graffiti, or even spark brush fires, which, as you might imagine, is a nightmare scenario in the dry hills of Griffith Park. And when the fire risk was noticed, the city clamped down. Some trail access points were permanently closed, others were rerouted away from direct lines of sight. And after years of complaints from residents in Beechwood Canyon, both Google Maps and Waze were pressured to reroute digital navigation away from the residential streets that were never really designed for thousands of tourists to visit weekly. Homeowners described the situation as a nightmare. According to a 2016 article in the Austin American-Statesman, one resident said, quote, "We had people park in our driveways, leave trash, even camp in our yards, all because they wanted a better selfie. And this went on for years." In fact, another neighbor told The Signal back in 2005, quote, "It's like living at the bottom of a parade route, but the parade never stops." At its peak, local emergency services were responding to dozens of 911 calls a month, not for criminals, but for lost tourists, heat stroke, and arguments over parking. The city eventually partnered with the Hollywood Sign Trust and Department of Recreation and Parks to post more signage, install digital deterrents, and even build fake trailheads to misdirect would-be trespassers. Today, the official position is clear. The sign is not a tourist attraction, it's a landmark. One you can admire from a distance, but if you get too close, you're probably going to jail. So that's the story of the Hollywood sign and why you can't visit it. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and if you did, please consider supporting us by clicking subscribe. Otherwise, until next time, I'm Ryan Socash, signing off.